So, welcome all. Thank you for joining us. I know people have been very busy and starting to probably come back from the summer. Today, we are joined by the one and only Ayikai Poswayo of Amend. Ayikai is a program director at Amend, an NGO which focuses on road safety in Africa. Kai's undergraduate degree is in civil engineering, and master's degree is in transportation planning and engineering. Prior to joining Amend, Kai worked as a traffic engineer for consultancies in the UK and Ghana. She worked on a variety of projects, including pedestrian, cyclist, and bus priority schemes from feasibility stage to construction, as well as carrying out road safety audits. It was from this work that her keen interest in the safety of vulnerable road users developed. Kai joined Amend in 2015, and her role involves directing the implementation of the Safe Schools Africa program, which we will hear about more today. Kai is based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and has worked on projects in over 10 countries on the continent. Personally, I've had the pleasure to work with Kai on the Botna Child Road Safety Challenge in Tanzania, amongst many other things, and I've learned so much from her about road safety engineering, remediations around schools, and the indicators that have been required. So with that, please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to Kai. But before I give the floor to you, Kai, just a bit of housekeeping, of course, as you guys are familiar with this format. We'll start with introduction, which is done now, and we'll have a presentation from Kai for about 20 to 25 minutes. And then at the last portion of the hour, we will have a bit of an open dialogue and Q&A, so which I will help moderate with that. So thank you again, and Kai, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny, and thank you everyone who's joined today. As Sunny mentioned, I'm going to be talking about our Safe Schools Africa program and collaborating on multilateral development bank finance projects across Africa. Just a bit about Amend. Sunny mentioned we're a road safety NGO and our work is focused primarily in Africa. The purpose of our programs is really to deliver safe and healthy journeys and improved environments in developing countries.
You have to know that I'm big on human rights.
Sorry, can somebody, please, there's somebody talking. Can you please put yourself on mute? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Kai, go ahead.
That's fine, yes. So Amend has offices in 3 countries on the continent, Ghana, Tanzania, and Mozambique. But then we also carry out our program work in other countries on the continent, as is shown on the map. In other countries where we don't have offices, we partner with NGO organizations in those places. So I'm sure all of you on the call probably already know this, but maybe a bit of background about the situation with child road safety. We know that the World Health Organization reports that 1.19 million people are killed annually as a result of road traffic injury. And road traffic injury is the leading cause of death among children and young people between the ages of 5 and 29. So a big issue. Sub-Saharan Africa accounts for 19% of all road deaths worldwide. To zoom in a bit on Africa and the work Amend has done, we carried out some surveys, some travel to school surveys to try and understand how children are actually getting to school. And across 4 cities on the continent, over 80% of children were walking, which is fantastic. It's a wonderful thing. And we want to be able to promote that and make sure that children can get to school safely and comfortably. In Tanzania, we did some other studies, a scientific study, which covered about 13,000 school children, revealed that 62.4% of all child injuries occurred on a journey to school. So we see how important this journey to school is if we really want to tackle the problem of road traffic injury amongst children in Africa. The other interesting fact was that 85% of those injured were pedestrians. So again, we see the importance of tackling or ensuring that child pedestrians are safe. The most interesting, for me at least, was that 50% of all children injured were hit by a motorcycle. And for those of you who have visited some countries on the continent, particularly in East and West Africa, you will know that motorcycle taxis are a big thing, and the numbers are growing every day. And this is posing a risk for school children. So now I'm going to dive into the Safe Schools Africa program. And before I go into it, I just want to say that this program is a program which really, as a result of the partnership of the FIA Foundation, has really developed over many, many years. So we didn't come up with this program knowing all the answers, and we don't claim to have all the answers to the problem of child road traffic injuries on the continent. But this program really has developed over decades of learning about the problem on the ground, trying things, refining things, going back and trying different things. And it's really as a result of our partnership with FIA Foundation. So it is a partnership. It's currently a partnership between FIA Foundation, AFD, and Amend, with FIA Foundation and AFD being the donors, the funding partners, and Amend being the implementing partner on the ground in Africa. There are three main components of the Safe Schools Africa program at the moment. The demonstration projects, which are our SASIs, which we've had running for many, many years now. Assistance on MDB finance roads projects, which we started a few years ago, and then also capacity building to road project teams. So the demonstration arm of the program is really where we identify schools where children have either had injuries on their journeys to school or even be killed on their journeys to school. We carry out detailed assessments, and we work with stakeholders on the ground to physically go in and put in infrastructure improvements around schools. So you see the picture on the right from Tanzania at one school where we put in infrastructure improvements. So that's the demonstration arm, and that's been, like I said, running for a long time. There's an advocacy component with all three aspects of this program, and we'll touch on it as we go through the presentation. So maybe I'll just touch on a bit on each of the components, but I'll spend the most time on our second component, which is the assistance to MDB finance road project teams. So what is the program based on? What are the fundamental principles? Again, I'm sure everyone on this call probably already knows this. You would recognize the graph on the right. We know that the relationship between speed and the risk of pedestrian death is a very interesting one. At 30 kilometers per hour, if there's a crash, the risk of a pedestrian dying is 10%. And you move that to 50 kilometers per hour, and it rises exponentially to over 80%. So what we're trying to do here is that we're trying to separate children from traffic, number one, and where children and traffic do have to interact, say where children are crossing the road, we have to make sure that the speeds are very low, and so they're 30 kilometers per hour or even preferably less. I had mentioned a scientific study we had done in 2015, 2016 on our demonstration arm, on our SASI aspect of Safe Schools Africa, and we found that the program reduces road traffic injuries by 26%. So really, this is the basis of the whole program. Here is just a photo showing an example from component one, the demonstration project. And as I mentioned before, it also has an advocacy component. So after putting in infrastructure around schools where children are facing road traffic injuries or fatalities, we usually have a ribbon cutting event, and it's really an advocacy event. And the idea is really to bring more attention to this issue of road traffic injuries on the continent and get governments to pick this up and be doing more. And we have seen very positive effects on this. In Mozambique, for example, after our implementation at one school, A Luta Continua, the municipal council has also partnered with other organizations to try and implement infrastructure improvements at other schools. They put together a team, which we are part of, trying to compile a guideline for safe school zones. So really, we're finding that the demonstration projects as an advocacy tool is also very important. So now I'll move on to component 2, which is the assistance on MDB finance projects. And I just wanted to show this map. This shows one road in Mozambique, the N1, N10, which is under the IFRDP project. And you see that this one road has 43 schools along it. And so we really realized that, you know, if we want to make a change regarding the safety of children on our roads, we really need to be focusing on these new roads and rehabilitated roads, which are being put in every day or over many years, I should say, across the continent. Just a quick search on the World Bank website a few weeks ago, there were 166 live projects in Africa, and on the AFDB website, 182, with some form of transport or road components. And so we do see how there are a lot of these projects happening, and we really need to be paying attention to these projects. So let's look at, you know, what are some of the opportunities or positive things happening, and then what are some of the challenges or negative aspects. So there are a lot of opportunities. Even in my time of working in this field, I see with my own eyes this increased awareness and appetite amongst government teams and other stakeholders regarding road safety for children. So it's definitely something which people recognize is important, and people want to do something about it. We've never ever approached a government agency where they say this is not something important. It's something which is generally accepted as very important, and people genuinely want to do something about it. The other positive thing is that the MDBs have safeguards in place, and a lot of these relate to road safety. So governments want to meet these safeguards. The MDBs are trying to push them and ensure that the projects do have aspects relating to road safety on them. Then we also have things like road safety audits, which are sometimes part of roads projects in Africa, not always, but many times. So there are all these opportunities and openings when it comes to being able to influence child road safety on roads projects. So then one might ask, okay, so if that's the case, how come we still have dangerous roads being built? Because unfortunately we do. And it's a number of things. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but this is what we have at least found in our work. So as much as the government road agencies and the MDBs want safe roads to be built, there's a lack of capacity within the consulting engineers and contractors who are designing and building these roads on the continent. The other challenge is conflicting priorities. So as we said, you know, Africa is really at a stage of a lot of development, and a lot of road agencies are faced with like a great proportion of their road network being unpaved. So there's that balancing act of trying to develop and pave as many roads as possible, but then at the same time making sure that those roads which are being paved are have inclusion for the safety of child pedestrians and other vulnerable road users. And as we know, the road safety elements don't always come cheap. And so you find sometimes project teams start out with the best of intentions, and as the project goes along and budgets become tight, they start overrunning on the budgets, then they begin to cut things, and it's the road safety elements which usually get cut first. Also, politicians, you know, are usually always pushing for more kilometers of roads as opposed to a shorter kilometer of road length and better safety facilities. The third thing we are finding is that the roads project teams are dealing with so many different aspects. They're trying to make sure that the roads they design actually can work in terms of their alignments and all that. And there is not one person who is really keeping a focus on the child pedestrian, as an example. And when that happens, you realize that a project could start out with the best intentions for child pedestrians, and then as time goes on, and they realize that, you know, there are also settlements which are close to the road, and people need to be compensated to take back the road space, then things like footpaths get cut from the road plan and all that. So these are some of the challenges which are faced by road project teams across the continent. So I just wanted to give, just to explain our sort of entry points on these MDB finance roads projects. At the moment, there are sort of two main entry points. We either get an introduction through the Multilateral Development Bank itself. So a task team leader might be interested in having Safe Schools Africa assistance on the project, or in many cases as well, the governments themselves approach us because of our work with them previously. We've collaborated with quite a few governments on our demonstration components of the program. And so they come to us and say, you know, can you help us with this new roads project? So those are the two sort of entry points on the MDB projects. And in terms of the actual phase of the project, the roads project, we really can come in at any phase. So at the feasibility or preliminary design phase, right up until the construction or post-construction phase. But what we do find is that the earlier we get involved, the better. Because as we know, if we can get involved earlier and carry out a detailed assessment on the needs of school children, then we're able to give recommendations, and budget allocations can be made right from the beginning, as opposed to if we get involved at a later stage where budgets have already been agreed, and in order to make any additions, there needs to be some sort of addendum to a contract. So the earlier the better, and also the earlier we come in, there's more potential also to give more robust recommendations rather than coming in later where it's more of a sort of retrofitting exercise. So this is the 11-stage process of component 2 of Safe Schools Africa. I'll just talk through each stage briefly. The first stage is the project identification stage, where that's when we're in talks with the project teams to try and understand where the project is at, what stage it is, what has been done so far, has there been anything related to road safety done yet, road safety audits, all that. And at that stage, we also review all the project documentation available. The second stage is where we go out for a reconnaissance visit. And during that stage, we map out all the schools directly along the project road. And sometimes, many times, also schools which may not be directly along the project road, but where the children from those schools either walk along or have to cross the road which is being rehabilitated or constructed. The third stage would be to come back to the project team. So the project team, you know, comprising the government. So the government usually has a project implementation unit. So that unit with their design consultants, and if there's a contractor already in place for that project, also the contractor, and also the MDB on the project as well. The fourth stage would then be to go back and do a more detailed data collection, both within the schools which have been identified, as well as along the project road. From that data collection, we do some detailed analysis, and we come up with a picture of what the needs and requirements are for the safety of school children along the project road are. And with that information, we're able to present the project team with a summary of findings and recommendations. So stage 7, we discuss these findings and recommendations again with the team, and depending on which stage or which phase, I should say, the project is at, then the project team will decide on what the next steps would look like. It could involve just incorporating those recommendations as part of the design if the design is still being done, or it might involve some revisions to existing designs. The 9th stage is really just to stay on during the construction period, offering any supports which may be required. The 10th stage is when the construction is complete and we have the built results. And the 11th stage is a sort of complementary aspect, the softer aspect where we provide some road safety awareness and education to school children and communities, and also do some advocacy. So that's the 11-stage process. And I just want to show you a few photos and snapshots from that process over the next few slides. So here is just this is from a project in Ghana where we mapped out all the schools both along and close to the project road. The blue line and the yellow line are, and a bit of the red line at the top are the roads being constructed, and you can see the schools which have been highlighted. We generally classify schools by level of road safety risk. So the red ones, high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And this is based on a number of factors: the proximity to the project road, where the children have to cross, etc. The existing reports of road traffic injuries at the schools, etc. So this table just shows, it's a snapshot from one of our reports, the very initial summary of findings from different schools. So the blue school, low risk, yellow, medium risk, and the red one was a high risk school which had been identified. Now, the roads which we are dealing with are really very diverse. We're dealing with roads in rural areas which are unpaved and being upgraded to paved standard, or unpaved and being upgraded to engineering unpaved standards, or trunk roads, as you see on the left, which are linking countries together. This is a road between Zambia and Tanzania. Then there are urban roads which we're dealing with. The road on the right is one in Maputo in Mozambique. So it's really a wide range of roads, but all these roads have children walking along them, crossing them with cars of different speeds and different compositions of vehicles using these roads. And I think the thing which cuts across all these roads is that we always know that if these roads are rehabilitated or built without any intervention for the children, we expect the speeds on these roads to increase significantly, and thus the road safety risk to also do the same. These are some photos from our in-school assessments. We speak to the children themselves to understand how they're traveling to school, where they live, where they're crossing the road, challenges they currently face, what the road traffic injury rates are, etc. We also speak to the school teachers, the school heads, parents, and even also people who live and work around the schools and the roads which are being constructed. So vendors, truck drivers, motorcycle taxi riders, etc. Here we see some of our on-street assessments. So with the on-street detailed assessments, we do pedestrian counts, vehicle counts, speed surveys, and the like. So this is just some photos showing our team on the ground doing some of the surveys. These photos show our engagement with the project team. So like I said, this is the key aspect of the program. We really have to work with them throughout the process, because as you know, implementing a road project is not a linear operation. There are so many conflicting priorities, so many challenges. So the key is really remaining engaged with the team throughout the process. to make sure that there's a two-way dialogue and understanding of what the road safety needs for school children are, but for us also understanding what the current constraints within the projects are. The recommendations we give come in different forms depending on the phase of the project. So this is an example of one project where some of the design had been done, and we gave some recommendations as annotations on the design for consideration by the project team. We also sometimes give typical school zone layouts depending on the nature of the project. With one project, this project in Zambia, after we gave our recommendations, the government team actually included our recommendations as an addendum to the request for proposals, basically embedding what the needs for school children are as part of the project from the start. A very critical part of the Safe Schools Africa Component 2 aspect is staying till the construction period. As we mentioned, a lot of the time you have consultants who come in, they write beautiful reports, submit it, and then they are out. They are paid and they are out. And along the way, these recommendations get dropped. That's what we found. It's the reality on the ground for various reasons. So the key part of this program is staying through to construction. This is a picture of us having a meeting with a project team where they were actually faced with a dilemma because they had limited budget. So the question was, which schools do we focus on? What can we do with the budget we had? So there was a consultation, and they actually asked for a priority list. So they asked us to rank the schools according to which we thought was the highest priority. And then also we had to modify some of our recommendations a bit just to get the best out of, you know, the available budget which they had. So this is a very important part of the program. A new thing we've started over the last few months, and this has been such an interesting aspect of the program, is the use of drone footage. So we've started collecting drone footage along the project roads and around schools where we work, and using a program called Good Vision to analyze this drone footage. Good Vision is able to identify pedestrians and also vehicles and classify vehicles by type. So cars, motorcycles, bicycles, trucks. And this really helps give a picture of what's happening on the road. And project teams have been thrilled about this because it really helps them see their project road from an angle which they perhaps hadn't seen it from before. This is a school in Mozambique, and this is just a snapshot from the drone footage. And what Good Vision does is really helps. This is one of the outputs of Good Vision, and you see the trajectories of the pedestrians, which is yellow, the trajectories of the vehicles. You see green as cars, and the lighter, the teal sort of color is for motorcycles. And just by having this picture, even though the project team had done their traffic data analysis and knew the number of vehicles and the number of pedestrians, having this image really, you know, woke them up to the fact that there were so many more pedestrians using this section of road than there are vehicles. And the project team was then open to the idea of increasing the widths of footpaths at this location just by looking at this image. So it's also been a very good advocacy tool. So this is just showing some of our current projects. The ones in black are the assistance on road projects. So in Zambia, Tanzania, Mozambique, São Tomé and Príncipe, Ghana, and then the grayed out ones are demonstration projects. So in Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Botswana, and also Mozambique. So these are the ongoing projects. This slide just shows the phase at which each project is. As I said, we come in at different phases. So some of them are still at the preliminary design phase, whereas some are already at the construction phase. This is showing some of the statistics on our current projects. And you see here that the numbers of children we're reaching on these 7 projects. There are 173,000 school children within 2 kilometers of the project road, and about 80,000 school children directly along the project road. And with our demonstration project, SASAI, over 10 years, we only reached, I guess it's not only, but then just for comparison, you see we reached about the same number of children. So we really see the importance of this assistance to road project teams if we really want to take this to scale and reach more children. The final component of the program is our capacity building of project teams. Some of this capacity building is incidental. As we provide the assistance to project teams, members from the government actually accompany us to go out to the field, identify schools, do some of the data collection and all that. So there's that incidental capacity building. They always come out of that process like quite intrigued and seeing things from a different angle. But then there's also the more deliberate part, which we haven't done extensively, but have done on one project in Tanzania, on the RISE project in Tanzania, which my colleagues Tom and Simon worked on, where there was really a focus on trying to work with the project teams to introduce a people-centered design approach onto the project. And that was very successful, and the World Bank was very happy with that. And that project is now at the construction phase. And what we found is that with this capacity building, you can't do it just sitting in a meeting room. You actually have to go out with the teams, walk with them along the road, speak to the community members with them, and actually be side by side with them throughout the process. The Safe Schools Africa program has won a number of awards. The SASAI aspect, the demonstration aspect, won the WRI Ross Prize for Cities in 2019. And last year, the Assistance to Project Teams components won the IRF Excellence in Roads African Awards for Road Safety. So I'd just like to finish off by first really thanking the FIA Foundation, because all of this would be totally impossible without their true partnership. They've been true partners from the beginning, and the AFD, they're new partners on the program, and they've been great. So thank you to our donors, and also a very, very special thank you to the team, to the Safe Schools Africa team. I see a number of them are on here, and some of our NGO partner organizations are on here as well. Really, like, I can't emphasize enough, what each person on the team brings to the program. Like I said, we don't go in having all the answers, but it's as a result of every single person's unique contribution, from the innovation with technology, to the engineering aspects, to the experience with the field data collection, the stakeholder engagements, the advocacy. Each person brings a unique aspect, and that is what has made Safe Schools Africa what it is now. And I have no doubt that we'll continue to learn and grow. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Kai. That presentation has been, I've seen it a few times, different iterations, but this has been the most complete one. So thank you very much. And just recognizing you do have a few of your other team members on the call. So shout out to Simon, Tom, George, Juliet, who's also familiar with the project. So feel free to add on anything that Kai would have missed. And I know that Rita is on the call as well, and Avi, who's familiar with the AFD aspect of the partnership, which is also fascinating. But yeah, just a little bit of reflection from me, and anyone who wants to chime in or have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the group chat. You mentioned how, yeah, it's amazing how this project is about solving the problem before it actually eventuates. That it's sort of gives a little bit of big value for money, where it's not retrofitting or retrospectively amending designs before it's already been done. You mentioned there in one of your slides about the 11 stages, but what you didn't mention probably, Kai, is probably about the length of time that's needed to monitor and continually sort of keep track of these projects and keep sort of helping the project team, task team leaders, and the community. Can you perhaps give a little bit of insight and speak a little bit about that, about the length of time? Because we know that from project identification to sort of like the mapping and then the findings and recommendations, and you also gave a little bit of an example there where they had to do an addendum. I'm sure all of those take a long time. So perhaps speak a little bit more about that.
Yes, Annie, they do indeed. And I think it's not even so much this. I think I'm going to go to another slide, actually, which I think will give a better idea of the length of time. Let me see if I can get to it. The slide which shows the phases. So a project, as I'm sure many people are aware, a roads project can, take from beginning to end, can be 3 to 10 years, really, and probably closer to 10 years in Africa. Right from, the point at which the project is conceptualized, and there are all the studies which are required, and then applying for, in many cases, these projects are financed through loans from MDB. So getting that loan approval, then, all the procurement process, it's really a very long process, and it can be 10 years or even more. But then, like I said, we come in at different stages. So there are some projects where we've come in at the construction phase, and there are some projects where we've come in at the very beginning. And we really do have to have this range of phases, or else it would be very very discouraging if you had to wait for 10 years to see any results, 10 years or more. So yes, so these, I don't know if that answers the question with respect to time.
No, it certainly does.
But also, yeah.
And that's really good. And this is a good slide to do it. I mean, to showcase that. I mean, if you are interjecting early on, even in the pad stage or project preparation stage, you can certainly have a say in terms of the scope, in terms of work. And that way, you actually form the contract together and collab together. So the earlier, the better. And I think that's the key message here. There's a question from Molly of yours on the chat. I'll just read it out for everyone. We hear of this trade-off, a lot with policymakers wanting more kilometers of road over safe, well-designed roads, especially from MDB projects. What evidence do you point to in order to convince them? Are there some case studies you can recommend to check out? So I guess, yeah, that sort of tension between quality over quantity, right? Doing it right. So can you speak a little bit about that, Kai? And the rest of the MEN team as well. I know you're around.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, so I mean, something we do is we actually collect the stories of children, because when a statistic is just a statistic, it looks like just a statistic. It's just a figure. But then if you can actually tell a story of a child who has been injured on a particular road from this school, which you can point to, and all that is very convincing. So that's something we definitely do. The other thing also, I think, is just this lack of appreciation of, sometimes the people who are actually using the road. So this is where also the drone footage has really been helping, because project teams are like, wow, we didn't realize there were actually that many pedestrians compared to vehicles on the road. So these are some of the tools we've been using. But yeah, please, my team members do help.
And I think it'll be really fascinating, just learning more about this project, where that technology and good vision comes in. I'm excited to be monitoring this with you, Kai, and the team. And I'd love to see some of these drone footage later on with the AI tools post construction completion, right? And see that that difference between, you know, pre and post and the movement of the children, right? And I think that would be fascinating to see. Tom, do you want to add on something? Please. Might be on mute. Can anyone else hear Tom? I can't hear Tom.
No, I can't hear him.
Sorry, Tom. We'll get back to you, but and Tom is very knowledgeable in this space, so I'm looking to hear from him. There's another question in the meanwhile from Jessica. How did you pick the schools that needed these improvements? I think you touched on that a little bit, where in one project you actually had to rank them because obviously you can't fix them all. So can you just speak a little bit about that, Kai?
Yes. So for the demonstration projects, we, in the places where we work, in the countries where we have offices, we do have an annual check. We have a list of all schools within the city, and we ring round and get anecdotal road traffic injury data. So we use that to try and be able to see which ones require immediate intervention. So that's for the demonstration arm of the project. Then for the assistance to project teams, like I mentioned, there was a case where, you know, the project team actually said, look, could you help us with ranking these? And so we, like I said, we also categorize them on high risk, medium risk, low risk, depending on their proximity to the road, where the children cross the road, etc. So that's another way which we use to choose the schools.
Yeah. So is community engagement and sort of talking to the private sector as well as a big component of that? Of course, you would probably get a lot of insight into sort of which schools obviously are determined by ranking in terms of risk, and also perhaps the amount of children that they enroll and so forth.
Exactly, yes. So that is the case, and what we're also finding is that schools approach us because we've been in the space for a while. We actually have schools knocking on our door or ringing us to say, hey, we have this problem at this school, could you help? And then governments as well, the same. Municipal councils will say, you know, we have a challenge at this school. Is this something you could consider on your list of interventions? So yeah.
Absolutely. Tom, you're back. Are you able to hear us?
I can hear you. I'm sorry about that. I hope you can hear me now and see me as well. So just picking up on Molly's question from earlier about sort of examples of how we get governments committed, and also an example, a demonstration of what Kai has talked about, the length of time that you need to commit to these projects. Taking an example from Tanzania, the World Bank RISE project. We first worked on that in 2019 and developed a people-centered design methodology for the design of the 300 kilometers of roads on that project. And we worked very closely with an engineer called Humphrey Kanyenye, who at the time was reasonably junior. And he came out with us into the field, met the communities, and there was one particular meeting that he had with some school children that really touched him. And from that point, he has been fully supportive of this people-centered design approach. He's now the coordinator of all World Bank financing for roads projects in Tanzania, and is a huge supporter of this. Kai and I, talk to him often. And Kai will be going to Delhi with him in a couple of days' time to present at the safety conference. And having someone like that, having a champion like that, is really important. Someone who can explain to us the issues from inside government, and he's now helping us to advocate to the development banks for more financing for road safety. And because we've got him in with us, it's not just as an NGO focused on road safety saying, we need more money for road safety. It's us working with the government to figure out real practical ways of ring fencing money, making sure that money for road safety doesn't get cut at the end of the project. So staying in for the long term, working closely with the governments and the project teams is where you really get value. And that's what Safe Schools Africa is trying to offer.
Thank you, Tom. And that's a great point. I think people sometimes often miss the fact that banks are just that, they're banks, right? And the real client are actually the government itself. But the governments also need to be able to demand and ask the right questions, whether it's that paradigm between quality or quantity, or what is it that's really important to them. And so this kind of dialogue and also upskilling their technical expertise in the private sector and also the government sector is very important. And I think I love that sort of that different components that you have that touches on all of those, not just a demonstration, but then also indeed the stakeholders that's involved in this question. That's a great answer. Thank you so much, Tom. Kai, you mentioned about the entry points before, whether it's from the government or from the MDBs. And there's a question here from Iman, which is really good. Have you seen, I think it's maybe a bit early at the moment, but have you seen more accountability from the MDBs via the contractors in ensuring road safety, especially for vulnerable groups, is a key indicator for success or completion of road projects? So you touched on a little bit about the safeguards, and make no mistakes about it as well. Like this project is manifested because of some of those complexities and failures of implementation on the ground from these massive, big MDB projects. But so far, have you seen a little bit of perhaps accountability or change in terms of from the MDB side? Because we know that, the advocacy goes both ways too. Us at the foundation, we definitely want to see this as somehow a catalyst for institutional change at the World Bank level or the other MDB level to sort of cater for a little bit more safety or changing of the safeguards towards vulnerable groups like pedestrians. But I don't know whether that's a little early in the game so far. But can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think so there are some task team leaders who we've worked with who are just really amazing. And I want to just mention here, there's a task team leader from the project in São Tomé and Príncipe, who it's actually very early on in the project. So he's already at the very beginning trying to make sure that as they put together the project preparation documents for loan approval, that this bit is really embedded in from the beginning. And you can see he's really pushing for it. And that's really he has a great passion and focus on this. So yes, the other thing, I think a lot of the challenge also is also on the government side. Like the governments also have to really, and that's where the working with governments is so important, because the requests also have to come from the governments, and the governments need to be committed to really wanting to have something in there for road safety, which, can't be cut or that. So I think, with our work with governments as well, slowly but surely we are getting there, and we're seeing glimmerings of hope here and there.
Thank you, Kai. And a reminder to everyone to just mute if you're not speaking. Thank you very much. While we have Rita also on the call, Rita, we haven't touched on a little bit of the partnership that we've got with AFD, and we know that's still in the early stages as well. But that is also an exciting sort of paradigm that we might have, having the French Development Agency on board. Can you speak a little bit of that, Rita, and share it with the group?
Yeah, we met with the AFD first on a trip that I did with a team of men in Ghana, I think, in Accra it was, and then we got in touch with the headquarters in Paris, and they were very interested. I mean, they really welcomed us with open arms. They really are in favor of a people-centered design. So that's for projects they identified projects in Côte d'Ivoire and in Senegal in secondary cities. So we're working together with the MEND and local NGOs to put that in place. And it's looking that's going to potentially expand. So there's a lot of interest there and support, which is very exciting, really, and was initially a bit unexpected. But yes, a very nice project with 6 schools spread over 2 secondary cities in Senegal and 1 city in Côte d'Ivoire, with now an expansion to more schools in Côte d'Ivoire.
That's fantastic. And just a reminder to people as well that, a lot of our call this year and towards Marrakesh is towards finding more of these opportunities for scaling up, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with a lot of the program managers and our partners also, and ourselves too, to be able to realize some of these opportunities. And Amen and the FIA Foundation has been able to do that with AFD, which is encouraging. And the next steps for us is perhaps to even look at other whether donors or philanthropies or other development agencies that might come on board to Safe School Africa, which would be exciting for it to grow. As you can see, the impact has been staggering so far. So that's really great news. Tom mentioned before that a few of us, including Kai, will be at Safety this weekend, and there'll be presentations on that. So please feel free to join if you are coming to Delhi. Are there any other questions from the floor? Danielle, you've been surprisingly quiet this time around, but that's okay. You said you're in listening mode. And I know
it was very noisy here, so yeah, but it was a great presentation. So it was it touched a lot of important points for Brazil as well. So thanks a lot.
And we know that the same case is happening in Brazil too, where you've been able to sort of secure funding even at the city level from the World Bank and doing this way. So that's fantastic. Kai, any other comments from yourself to close?
Just to say that, we are just looking forward to our continued work on this and looking forward to seeing what the next steps are. As I said, we didn't start off knowing that we were going to end up offering assistance on MDB finance projects. So yes, who knows what we'll be doing next. It's another thing we're finding very interesting is that also land use planning comes into play, where schools are actually located. Like, how can we have schools which are along trunk roads in the first place, So I think there's a lot of potential on where this could go and a lot of potential to influence how the continent looks in 10, 50, 100 years.
Thank you so much for those thoughts. And yes, absolutely, urban design comes into it, and certainly a consideration when it comes to this. In fact, I would probably push a bit further and think about why are we even building roads in the first place? Is there any thought towards developing a public transport or even things like trains or trams along these lines? So that's another question, but perhaps not to be answered in this session. Thank you so much for everyone's attendance.